Hi, everybody. Today we're going to talk about inflation. If you'll remember, the three goals of every economy is to one, promote economic growth, two, to keep unemployment down, and three is to control prices and limit inflation. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today, limiting inflation. So, Zimbabwe is a country recently that had crazy high inflation. 2008, their annual inflation rate was 79.6 trillion percent. So, how long did it take prices to double? Every 24 hours, prices doubled. So think about that, right? A bicycle today costs $20, and then tomorrow it costs $40, and then in 3 days it costs $80, and you get how to double numbers, but um, that's disaster for an economy. And so they just kept printing more money because of how high the prices were. And at one point they were issuing $100 trillion bills to deal with it, right? Like, look at all this money this kid has. Is he rich? No. He's going to take that much money just to buy a small amount of things. But we don't want that to happen. So what is inflation? Inflation is a rising general level of prices, and it reduces the purchasing power of money. So as prices go up, you're going to be able to afford less and less stuff. And so that's inflation. For example, and we every country experiences inflation. The goal is to keep it under control. So here in the U.S., it takes about $2 to buy what $1 would have bought in 1987. It takes $6 to buy what $1 would have bought in 1970. It takes $24 to buy what $1 would have bought in 1913. So you get the idea. Over time, prices are going to go up, but that's pretty manageable. So when inflation occurs, each dollar of income is going to buy fewer and fewer goods than before. So your paycheck will buy you less and less stuff. So it affects real wages and real income. It doesn't affect nominal wages and nominal income. We're going to talk more about this in a minute, but it affects your real wage, your purchasing power, and your real income. How much stuff can you get from your paycheck? How much stuff can you get from your income? So is inflation good or bad? Well, in general, rampant inflation is bad because banks don't lend to people, and so people don't save any money. And if there's no lending or saving, there's no investment, and economies don't grow. And so that's going to decrease investment in GDP. What about deflation? What about prices going down? Well, deflation is a general decrease in the price of goods. It's a negative inflation, right? Prices are going down. And deflation isn't good either. Deflation is bad because people will hoard money, they'll hoard financial assets, and that's not good for an economy either. It's probably not as bad as inflation, but it's not good. So it's going to decrease consumer spending and GDP. If people are holding onto their money as an asset, then they don't spend any money, and that GDP will actually go down. Here's a new word you need to know: disinflation. Disinflation is when prices are still going up, but they start going up at a slower rate. So um, think about like a race, right? If you're running forward as fast as you can, think of that as inflation. Well, deflation is you start running backwards, and disinflation is you're still running forward, but you're slowing down. That's disinflation. Okay, so effects of unanticipated inflation. Who's helped and who's hurt? Well, who's hurt? People with fixed incomes. If your income doesn't change, but prices are rising, you're going to be able to buy less and less stuff. Lenders at fixed interest rates. So if you lend somebody money at a fixed interest rate and you can't raise that rate over the life of the loan, you're going to get paid back with money that's going to buy you less than what you lent it out at, right? So you're not going to get the interest rate that you hoped if prices are rising. By the time somebody pays you back, you're not going to be able to buy as much stuff as you'd planned on. Savers, if you saved money in the bank, right? Like, let's say you worked your whole life, you worked really hard, you saved up $1 million, and then all of a sudden inflation hits real bad. Well, all that hard work was for nothing if tomorrow the price of a Big Mac is $1 million, right? People that are helped by inflation, people that make fixed payments. So if you're paying a bill and that bill doesn't change, and the price of everything else is going up, but your bill stays the same, well, good for you. Borrowers at fixed interest rates. If you borrow money at a fixed interest rate, the interest rate can't go up. The price of everything else goes up, but the money that you borrowed isn't going up. So hey, that's a win for you. A business where the price of the product increases faster than the price of the resources. So think about like if you had a business making um, smoothies, right? If the price of smoothies goes up, you can charge a higher price. But if the price of fruits doesn't go up, well, hey, you're getting the fruit at the same price as before, but now you're getting to charge your customers more. That means you're going to make more profit. All right, now, very important thing that you have to know is the difference between nominal wage and real wage. A nominal wage is measured by dollars rather than purchasing power. Nominal wage is basically the number that's on your paycheck, right? Just the number. Real wage is adjusted for inflation. So if there's inflation, you got to ask your boss for a raise, right? Your nominal wage stays the same, but when inflation happens, your real wage goes down, right? You didn't get a pay cut, but you're able to buy less stuff. And so your nominal wage stayed the same, but your real wage is going down. And so you're going to need more money to buy stuff. Oh, think about this example. New contract with 3% pay raise. He's pretty excited, but inflation rose 4%. So really, did that 3% pay raise cover the increase in the cost of goods? No, that's actually so he's actually losing 1% of his paycheck, even though he got a 3% pay raise. So um, nominal wages are just the number that's on your paycheck. Real wages tell you how much you can actually afford to buy with your paycheck. So here's an article from earlier this year. Feeling poor? Well, that's because real wages fell last year, right? So people's paycheck number stayed the same, but the amount of stuff they were able to buy with that paycheck actually went down. So that's a problem. Now let's look at nominal versus real interest rates. All right, interest rates and inflation. So what are interest rates and why do lenders charge them? Well, interest rate is basically the cost of borrowing money. Why do lenders charge them? Well, that's how lenders make money. They lend you money, but they're not just going to give you the money to profit off of, right? They're going to lend you the money and then they're going to charge you an interest rate and you're going to have to pay them back the amount of money you borrowed plus interest. Okay. So let's say the nominal interest rate is 10% and the inflation rate is 15%. How much is the real interest rate? Okay. Well, the nominal interest rate, just like um, the nominal wage, is just the number that's on the paper, right? The nominal interest rate is the number that's on the paper that you signed when you borrowed the money. So if the nominal interest rate is 10%, but prices are rising by 15%, how much is the real interest rate? That would mean that the real interest rate is actually negative 5%. Lenders should not lend money at 10% interest if the prices are going up by 15%. They'd be better off spending the money themselves. So real interest rates is the percentage increase in the purchasing power that the borrower pays, right? So real interest rates are adjusted for inflation. It will tell you how much stuff you're going to be able to buy with the money that you get paid back. So real interest rates are the nominal interest rate minus inflation. Nominal interest rates are the amount of money that the borrower pays, not adjusted for inflation. So again, it's just the number that's on the contract. So the nominal interest rate is the real interest rate plus the expected inflation. Okay. Let's do a few examples of how you might see questions asked about this on problem sets or on the test. So example one, let's say you lend out $100 at 20% interest and inflation is 15%. Okay. So a year later, you're going to get paid back $120, right? What's the nominal and what's the real interest rate? Well, the nominal interest rate is just the agreement that you made with the person you lent the money to. It's 20%. What's the real interest rate? Well, you're getting paid back this $120, but or the 20% interest. But remember, prices went up by 15%. So really, you're only getting paid back 5% interest. Okay. The nominal interest rate is 20%, but the real interest rate, you got to subtract out the increase in prices. The real interest rate was only 5%. So in reality, you're going to get paid back with an amount that has less purchasing power than you hoped. If you were hoping to get back $120 that would buy you $120 worth of today's money, well, it's not going to happen because prices went up, and so you're going to be able to buy less stuff than the 20% increase you hoped for. Let's do example two. Let's say you lend out $100 at 10% interest, and prices are expected to increase by 20%, and in a year you get paid back $110. Well, what's the nominal interest rate? What's the real interest rate? The nominal interest rate is just the rate that you agreed upon, right? It's the number that's on the paper that you signed. So in this example, it's 10%. What's the real interest rate? Well, if you're getting paid back at 10%, but prices are going up by 20%, the real interest rate is negative 10%. The nominal interest rate was 10%, right? That's the amount that the lender and the borrower agreed on. But the amount that you're getting paid back in spending dollars is actually negative 10% because prices went up by 20%. So in reality, you're going to get paid back with an amount of money that has less purchasing power. All right, another example. Let's assume that bank hopes to make 5% rate of return. They want to make 5% profit off of a loan. Okay, that's real profit they want to make. 5% rate of return, real profit. So, if they expect that inflation is going to rise by 2%, what nominal interest rate should they charge if they want to make 5% profit? They should charge 7%, right? They're going to charge the 5%. That's the nominal interest rate, and they're going to include into that interest rate how much they expect prices to rise. So they're going to get the 5% rate of return that they want, and they're going to take into account the 2% rise in prices by tacking that on to the nominal interest rate. So real plus expected inflation will give you the number that banks should charge to make the amount of profit or the rate of return that they're hoping for. Now let's assume that a bank charges 7% nominal interest rate, but the bank's estimate was wrong. Like from the previous example, let's say they were wrong and inflation actually went up by 4%, right? So they were hoping to get 5% real rate of return, right? Real profit, but inflation was higher than they expected. So did they make their 5% profit? No, right? Didn't get the 5% rate of return. Why? They only made 3% real profit. Here's why. 2% rise in inflation ate into their nominal interest rate, right? So if they were hoping to get 5% profit, if they had known that the prices were going to rise by 4%, how much would they have charged if they had known, if they would have been able to see in the future to see what the inflation rate was? They should have charged 9% if they wanted to get 5% back. But because they only charged 7%, thinking that the inflation rate was going to be 2%, they've the increase of real inflation that actually happened was 4%. That tells us that they only made 3% real profit, which is less than the rate of the return that they were hoping for. All right, so here it is in numbers, easier to read. 7% nominal interest rate minus the 4% inflation rate equals only 3% in real profit, which is less than they hoped for. All right, last thing, you need to know the three causes of inflation. Let's get into them. All right, first cause is when the government prints too much money. It's the quantity theory of money. So if the government keeps printing money to pay off their debts, you can end up with what's called hyperinflation. And what's going to happen is with hyperinflation, is banks aren't going to lend out any money because it's going to be worthless when they get paid back. So investment's going to go down. People don't save any money. Nobody puts money in the bank. So they start just buying stuff before because the money's about to be worthless. You might as well get something for it now. And so the government has to print more money because there's an increase in money demand, and it's a disaster for an economy. So that happened in Germany after World War One. Germany lost the war and had to pay back all these debts to the Allies. And so they just printed a whole bunch of money to pay off their debts, and it resulted in hyperinflation. The German economy was ruined, and led to the rise of a fascist dictator who said, "Vote for me, I'll, I'll fix the economy." And we know how that ended up for the world. The quantity theory of money. Well, we'll get into the formula in a second. If real GDP in a year is 400 billion, but the amount of money in the economy is only 100 billion, how are we paying for things, right? How can we have a GDP of 400 billion but only have 100 billion in money supplied in the economy? Well, velocity of money. Money doesn't just get spent one time. Remember, one person's spending is another person's income. So I spend $20 at your store. Well, you just got $20 income that you can spend at somebody else's store, and they got $20 income and they can spend at a store. So that brings to the velocity of money. Velocity is the speed or the amount of times that an average dollar gets spent and respent in 1 year. So how much is the velocity of money in the example above? Well, 25%, right? Or sorry, four. Sorry, the velocity is four. 100 billion times four tells us the average bill gets spent four times in 1 year. So 100 billion times four gives us 400 billion in GDP. All right. So the quantity theory of money equation works like this. You have the amount of money in the economy, and then you have how much that money gets spent and respent. That's going to equal price times quantity of output. Now, if you'll notice, price times quantity of output is GDP, right? That's the amount of GDP. So if the velocity of money is constant, if the velocity of money doesn't change and GDP doesn't change, well, um, if you increase the money supply, we're going to be at disequilibrium. So if the amount of units that we produce didn't change, well, if you increase the money supply on this side, if velocity doesn't change and output doesn't change, well, what's going to have to increase on this side? Prices. If you increase the money supply, you're going to end up increasing the prices. And there you go. You've just created inflation. All right. So that one's, it makes sense when it comes to inflation, but it's the most complicated to explain. The other two are super simple. So Clause two is demand pull inflation. Increase in demand pulls up prices. When people spend more money, um, the prices are going to go up. Too many dollars chasing too few goods, right? People want more stuff, and so they're willing to pay more for it, and so prices start to rise, right? Overheating economy with excess spending with the same amount of goods, right? So the economy is still producing X amount of goods, but we want more. Well, prices are going to go up. And the third cause of inflation is called cost push inflation. If aggregate supply shifts to the left, right, that is stagflation, that's a negative supply shock. Increase in the cost of production, an increase in the cost that businesses have to pay means that they're going to have to raise their prices. And so there's going to be an increase in price level in an economy because suppliers are having to pay higher prices. So there you go. Those are the three causes of inflation: government prints too much money, demand pull inflation, and cost push inflation. All right. That was an introduction to inflation. See you in class.